You know, there's something almost magical about sitting down with a pair of knitting needles and a ball of yarn. It's not just about creating a cozy scarf or a warm blanket, though those are wonderful bonuses. No, knitting does something far more profound, something that quietly sharpens your mind in ways you might not even realize. If you've ever found yourself staring at a problem in your daily life, maybe figuring out how to organize your medicine schedule, or even just deciding the best route to take on your errands, you might be surprised to learn that knitting has secretly been training you to tackle these challenges with ease. That's right, those hours spent counting stitches and following patterns, they're not just passing the time, they're turning you into a master problem solver. Now, you might be thinking, how can something as simple as knitting do all that? Well, let me tell you, it's all about the way knitting quietly strengthens skills we use every single day. Skills like patience, focus, and creative thinking. And today, we're going to explore exactly how that works. So, grab your favorite knitting project, or just imagine holding those familiar needles, and let's unravel the first few ways knitting is secretly boosting your problem-solving skills. First, let's talk about pattern recognition. Every knitting project starts with a pattern, whether it's written down or stored in your memory. You follow the rhythm, knit 2, purl 1, maybe throw in a yarn over, and over time you start to see how each stitch affects the next. That's not so different from solving a puzzle in your daily life. Maybe you've noticed that taking your morning walk helps you sleep better at night, or that drinking an extra glass of water keeps your energy up. That's pattern recognition in action. Knitting trains your brain to spot these connections faster, so you can adjust and adapt with confidence. And then there's patience. Oh, knitting teaches patience like nothing else. Ever dropped a stitch and had to carefully work your way back to fix it? Or maybe you've spent hours on a project only to realize you've been twisting your stitches the whole time? Don't worry, we've all been there. But here's the thing. Those moments aren't setbacks. They're lessons in slowing down, taking a breath, and figuring out the next step. Life throws us little hiccups all the time, a missed appointment, a grandchild's last-minute schedule change, and knitting reminds us that with patience, we can work through anything. Now let's move on to spatial reasoning. When you're knitting, you're constantly visualizing how flat rows of stitches will turn into a three-dimensional shape. A sleeve, a sock, a hat. That's spatial reasoning at work. And guess what? That same skill helps you when you're rearranging furniture in your living room or packing a suitcase just right. Knitting keeps that part of your brain active. So when you're faced with a real-world, does this fit moment, your mind is already primed to find the answer. And here's the beautiful part. You've already been doing this for years. Every time you pick up those needles, you're not just making something with your hands, you're giving your brain a gentle workout, one that pays off in ways you might not even notice until you stop and think about it. But we're just getting started, because knitting doesn't just sharpen these skills in isolation. It weaves them together into something even more powerful, and that's exactly what we'll explore next. So, if you've ever wondered why knitting makes you feel so accomplished, just wait. There's even more to uncover. You know, one of the most wonderful things about knitting is that it never goes exactly as planned, and that's where the real magic happens. Maybe you've run out of yarn halfway through a project, or the pattern just doesn't look quite right the way you imagined. But instead of giving up, you adjust, you improvise, you turn a mistake into a design feature. And that, my friend, is adaptability in action, one of the most valuable problem-solving skills you can have, especially in your golden years. Think about it. Life doesn't always follow a perfect pattern either. Plans change, surprises pop up, and sometimes you just have to roll with it. But here's the good news. Every time you've improvised in your knitting, you've been training yourself to do the same in everyday life. Let's dig into how that works. First, there's adaptability. Knitting teaches you to think on your feet. or rather, on your needles. Maybe you've substituted a different yarn because the one you wanted wasn't available, or you've adjusted the sizing of a sweater because the gauge didn't turn out quite right. Those little fixes, they're proof that you're already a pro at adjusting to unexpected changes. And that skill translates beautifully off the needles. When the grocery store is out of your usual brand, or when a doctor's appointment gets rescheduled, your knitting-honed adaptability kicks in. You don't panic, you pivot. Then there's creative problem solving. Ever looked at a tangled skein of yarn and thought, well, this is a mess, only to patiently wind it into a neat ball? Or maybe you've turned a knitting oops into a unique texture or design. That's creativity meeting logic. And it's a powerhouse combination. In life, we face tangled situations all the time, miscommunications, household mishaps, even tricky family dynamics. But just like with yarn, you've learned to step back, assess, and find a way forward. Knitting reminds you that there's rarely just one right answer. Sometimes the best solutions come from thinking outside the pattern. And let's not forget resourcefulness. Knitters are the original upcyclers. Leftover yarn becomes a colorful patchwork blanket. A too small hat transforms into a pair of mittens. You know how to make the most of what you've got. A skill that's just as useful when you're stretching a budget, repurposing old furniture, or finding new ways to stay connected with loved ones. Knitting reinforces that scarcity isn't a dead end. It's an invitation to innovate. Here's the real kicker, though. All these skills grow stronger without you even realizing it. Unlike Sudoku or brain training apps, which can feel like homework, knitting disguises mental exercise as pure enjoyment. And the more you knit, the more naturally these problem-solving strengths show up in your daily life. But wait, there's one more layer to this. Because knitting doesn't just help you solve problems. It connects you to a whole community of fellow problem solvers. And that's where things get really interesting. There's something special about sitting in a circle of fellow knitters, isn't there? The soft click of needles, the shared groans over dropped stitches, the laughter when someone holds up a lopsided scarf and says, well, it has character. That camaraderie isn't just enjoyable. It's quietly sharpening your problem-solving skills in ways you might not expect. You see, knitting has always been a social craft. Generations have passed down patterns like heirlooms, and every time you ask, how did you fix that edge? Or, what cast-on works best for this? You're tapping into a collective well of wisdom. And that, the ability to seek help, share ideas, and learn from others, is one of the most powerful problem-solving tools of all. Let's start with collaborative thinking. Ever been stuck on a tricky part of a pattern, only to have a fellow knitter suggest a technique you'd never considered? Suddenly the problem unravels. That's the beauty of community. It reminds us we don't have to figure everything out alone. And isn't that true in life too? Whether it's troubleshooting a new phone or navigating healthcare paperwork, knitting teaches you the value of saying, hey, does anyone know how to handle this? That humility and openness to learning, pure gold for problem solving. Then there's emotional resilience. Knitting groups are masterclasses in encouragement. When a project goes wrong, and they all do at some point, you'll hear things like, oh, I've done that, let me show you how to fix it. Or, that yarn is begging to become something else. That supportive environment trains you to approach setbacks with curiosity instead of frustration. And when life throws its inevitable curveballs, a canceled trip, a stubborn home repair, you'll catch yourself thinking like a knitter, this isn't ruined. It's just taking a different shape than I planned. And let's not overlook legacy and perspective. Every time you teach a grandchild to knit or gift a handmade blanket, you're passing on more than just stitches. You're sharing an unspoken lesson. Problems are meant to be worked through one step at a time. That long-term perspective is what separates knee-jerk reactions from thoughtful solutions. After decades of seeing projects through, from messy first rows to polished finished pieces, you instinctively know that most challenges just need patience and persistence. So here's the truth we've been stitching together. Knitting isn't just a hobby. It's a lifelong training ground for the mind and heart. With every row, you're strengthening skills that help you navigate everything from daily inconveniences to life's bigger puzzles. And the best part? You've already been doing it all along. The next time someone admires your knitting and says, "I could never be that patient," you can smile and think, "Oh, but you could, one stitch at a time." Because that's the secret. Problem solving, like knitting, isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, trying again, and discovering that you've been capable all along. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What's a problem, knitting related or otherwise, that you've solved in a creative way? Share your stories in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, pass it along to a fellow knitter who might need the reminder that their craft is as mighty as it is cozy. Here's to every stitch, every solution, and every golden year made richer by the wisdom in your hands. Keep knitting and keep solving your way through life's beautiful patterns.